New guidance from the Ministry of Justice to Britain's police forces has raised fresh fears of a light-touch approach to crime. The guidance advises that first-time offenders for crimes such as drug possession, theft and shoplifting should receive a caution rather than being taken to court. At the same time, Government Minister Richard Holden says that prolific shoplifters should face jail. I'm very pleased to be joined by Adam Hawksbee, who's Deputy Director of the Onward think tank, as well as Steve Freer and Val Wawrosz, both former prison officers who founded Tempus Novo, a charity to rehabilitate ex-prisoners. Let me start with you, if I may, Adam. What is the argument for saying that those who are committing these fairly minor offences for the first time should face going to prison?
So I think the really important thing you mentioned there is the word prolific. So people that are maybe shoplifting, committing burglary, maybe are involved in antisocial behaviour for the first time, the evidence is pretty clear that for those first-time offenders, or maybe the first 2 or 3 offences, custodial sentences, prison are not the right approach. But there are an increasing number of prolific offenders, those that are committing dozens of crimes, and who aren't getting custodial sentences. And so we know that about 10% of convictions, or people that receive convictions, are responsible for over half of crime. Last year, there was data that said that the number of burglaries needed to commit was 27 to get a custodial sentence. So it's those prolific offenders where we should be using prison more regularly to ensure that the population are protected.
And Adam, tell me about the other advantages that would bring, because I mean, obviously you would argue that some people will not get burgled if the burglar is already in jail. And I suppose it would also help police clear-up rates.
It would, and one of the key things that we need to look at is confidence in the police and in the criminal justice system. So there was a report last year that showed that about 40% of people wouldn't bother reporting a crime because they wouldn't think anything would happen. Now, that's a real problem. Of course, that's not just about sentencing. It's also about the swiftness and the certainty of justice. You need to know that something's going to be investigated in the first place. And we shouldn't just be focusing on putting people into prison. It's a very small part of the solution, but it is an important one. And that's why I think the government are looking to address these prolific offenders.
Thank you very much. Now let's turn to Steve and Val, who have both been prison officers. Steve, let's start with you. What kind of general view have you been left with as a result of your professional experiences?
Yeah, hi, Michael. So after 30 years working in some pretty tough prisons, starting at Wormwood Scrubs and then did a long time at Leeds prison, and you see people, the same faces actually, coming in and out over years and decades. It's only when you really look behind why these people are committing crime that you can form what I think is a sensible opinion on how to deal with them. And the vast majority come from extreme poverty. They've had very little education. They're lucky if they know who the parents are. They don't know what love is. Actually, prison's respite for them. You become their family. That's how desperate they are, these people that are committing largely acquisitive crime. So from locking them up and having a view that actually that was the right thing to do, for lots and lots of years, I educated myself and saw a different way. And it is rehabilitation. If you want a long-term solution to reducing crime and less victims, then for me, it has to be the rehabilitative approach. And obviously through Tempus Novo, we add in employment, which gives the people self-worth, respect and income. That gives you the sustainability to rehabilitation.
Let me turn to Val Wawrosz. Very interesting listening to Steve's opinion and experience. The trouble, I would say, is that it's all very well saying rehabilitation is the way, but as far as I know, there are very few effective rehabilitation programmes in existence. And maybe it's a bit hard to expect the public to see low sentences, non-custodial sentences being handed out, wishing for an ideal world in which prisoners could be rehabilitated. Val?
Well, we've been doing exactly the same thing for the 30 years that I worked in prisons, and it's not working. You know, rehabilitation for short sentence prisoners doesn't work in prison at all. It's the wrong approach. Community sentences are a lot more effective. What these people need is a job, like Steve's just mentioned. because of the records that they've got and the in and out of prison that they've been doing all their life, they cannot get a job full of money until they found and stumbled across Tempus Novo. We've now placed 870 people into work, ex-offenders. And really interestingly, only 33 of those 870 have actually returned to custody within a 2-year period. The national stats are up to 45% reoffend within 12 months, up to 64% reoffend within 2 years. Ours is 4%, which proves beyond any doubt that getting them a job actually works. This is what's needed.
Let me go back to
the UK economy of £18.1 billion, by the way.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Let me go back to Adam Hawksbee. Now that you've heard what the guys from Tempus Novo are saying, how do you react to that?
So let me be clear, we should invest massively in rehabilitation programs and community sentences, drug rehabilitation. To be clear, lots of these offenders are often addicted to either illegal drugs or alcohol. We should be investing massively in the services that try and move those people away from crime. And I think that the causes and the drivers that were described are right. A lot of people that receive these sentences are in extreme poverty, but a lot of the communities in which they are committing their offences also experiencing extreme poverty. When we do focus groups around the country, people say the number one thing they want addressed in their area is often shoplifting, antisocial behaviour, burglary. And it cannot be right that if the same person is burgling homes or is robbing a local store 25, 50, 75 times, that they are allowed to continue doing that in the community. Prison is absolutely and should be a last resort, and it should be an environment where rehabilitation can occur. But it's not right that custodial sentences are off the table or unavailable for people that are very prolific offenders.
Let me just change the tone a tiny bit and go back to Val Wawrosz and ask, if people are interested in Tempus Novo and what you're doing with this charity, how can they get involved? How can they help?
You can contact us. We've got a website. We get referrals from prisons, from probation, from police, from the ET providers, from job centres. Anyone with a conviction all face the same problem. They cannot get a job for love and money because no one will take them on. What we do, we provide 12 months support for both the ex-offender and the companies that we place them into. Because that we make sure we don't just place them into a job, we keep them in that job. And that's the key to the success of what we do. What the government needs to do is to fund us, basically, to spread our service across the country. We're already in quite a few areas, but we need funding to get us into more areas, to get more of these people into jobs. That's what keeps them out of committing crime.
Maybe that's a topic that the Onward think tank could take up. Very pleased to have had Adam Hawksbee from Onward and also Steve Freer and Val Wawrosz. Absolutely fascinating discussion.